It is 8:26 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It's the second day of April, 2026, and this is episode 1291 of Bitcoin and Oil Go Boom. And it did go boom. In fact, I could just look at West Texas Intermediate crude oil charts and know exactly when President Trump started talking. Because it's this massive green candle. I mean, oil was coming down, and then it shot back up like the Artemis II, which did successfully launch yesterday. So we got two big old candles going straight up to the stratosphere. There are rumors. Rumors. There are headlines. However, I feel that I can only trust them as rumors at this point because nobody seems to have anything that they're presenting as a headline that is a substantiated report, a verified report. It's just like rumor. But there's a rumor that the country of Iran and the country of Oman are working a deal on protocols for the safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz. And nobody knows what that means. Is it going to be a fee? Because I know that Iran's already charging a fee for safe passage. Is it going to be is it going to turn into the Panama Canal? Who knows? Nobody knows. But the minute that those reports come out, West Texas Intermediate crashes from like $112 a barrel, which is where it ended up early this morning, all the way back down to like, 109. And now we're chilling back out at 110. Because I think this is because nobody, even with a Bloomberg terminal, can trust any of the mainstream media reports. And oil is just freaking going nuts. I'd hate to see I really don't even want to look at the volatility index on oil over the last month and 1 week. But we've got other fish to fry. And that is going to include Bitcoin, gold, and U.S. stocks dive as Trump pledges to hit Iran extremely hard. So we will go through a little bit about what Trump actually said yesterday during the speech. And then we're going to move on to BlackRock. They're filing a ticker for a Bitcoin Premium Income ETF. So always ask the question, where does the yield come from? Then we're going to move over to the Federal Reserve's bar saying that stablecoins need tighter controls. Then we will look at interactive brokers adding Bitcoin trading in the EU. And then after that, in the second part of the show, the Human Rights Foundation has released another list of 26 projects that they are funding. Thank God for the for the HRF, man. I mean, without the Human Rights Foundation, I think we would really have some very serious issues with people just not being able to get the word out in various countries around the world about what the hell's going on in extremely authoritarian situations. Blockstream's Jonas Nick and shrimps. And no, it's not etouffee. It's about this whole quantum stuff. Then the U.S. Treasury launches the very first set of rulemaking for the Genius Act. So buckle up for that one. Then a word of caution for the last part of the last story of the show. The Drift platform has been exploited for millions of dollars. Please stop doing DeFi. All right. Bitcoin, gold, and U.S. stocks dive as Trump pledges to hit Iran extremely hard. Akash Giramath has this one for Decrypt. Bitcoin and the broader financial markets, including gold and U.S. stocks, tumbled after U.S. President Donald Trump's primetime address on the war in the Middle East on Wednesday. In the address, Trump provided an update on the U.S. military campaign against Iran, codenamed Operation Epic Fury. He declared major victories after 1 month of operations, claiming that Iran's navy had been destroyed, its air force has been ruined, key terrorist leaders have been eliminated, and missile capabilities dramatically curtailed. I got to pause there. dramatically curtailed. I'm looking for completely destroyed. I'm looking for 50% operational destruction. I'm looking for anything other than dramatically curtailed. Because a curtailment isn't exactly, it's not a word that goes along with something like dramatic. So who knows what hell, the kind of hell missile capability Iran is left with at this point today. But Trump framed the operation as essential to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons, and he projected that core objectives are nearing completion. We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks, he said. We are going to bring them back to the Stone Age where they belong, Trump added. He concluded by noting that the U.S. will soon be safer, stronger, and more prosperous and greater than it has ever been before. The S&P and gold declined roughly 2% and 4% respectively, while crude oil rose from $98 to $107 per barrel. Crypto sell-off was exacerbated by weakening institutional support. Spot Bitcoin exchange-traded funds have ended the 4-week inflow streak, recording a $296.18 million outflow last week, according to So Value. Quote, risk assets are falling because Trump's speech last night gave no indication that he planned to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, said Jeff May, chief operating officer of crypto exchange BTSE. On prediction market Myriad, users now put the chance of crude oil's next move, taking it to $120 a barrel at 74% up from the lows of 69% on Wednesday. Myriad users also put a 54% chance of the average number of ships transiting the Strait of Hormuz to remain below 15, underscoring the persistent uncertainty surrounding the region. This lack of confidence is largely due to the ongoing impact of the war. Quote, even if hostilities do end, it will take months to secure the strait and even longer to restore regional oil and gas production to previous levels, May explained, noting that this delay could hinder economic growth in many countries and ultimately weigh down on crypto prices. Yeah, that's the end of that article. So that's what was said at precisely 6 p.m. my time, which would be Pacific Daylight Time yesterday. And then oil prices just kept creeping up. It's like it's impossible to contain at this point. I keep looking at this chart and I keep like matching up every time somebody from this administration says we've won or we've got a deal or they want a deal or what. And every single time it pushes oil down into this little wedge that I've got drawn on my chart. And then it just bounces back up. And then they'll say something else and it goes back down and then it bounces back up. And I really think that a lot of people thought that what Trump was going to do was outline exactly how the Iranian president was working with Trump's administration to get this whole mess cleared up. Because this whole speech came right off the heels of a couple of statements out of the administration saying, hey, man, the new or this Iranian president, which represents the new regime, that's what he was talking about. The new regime that he was talking about is this president and the people that support this president. And it seems odd that he would do that because if it's true that there are two factions working in Iran and one is headed by this Iranian president and the other one is headed by the supreme leader, would that not actually make it more likely that Iran's president would be assassinated internally? So it's not like Trump did that man any favors, but we didn't get that. We didn't get the outline of the deal. We didn't get anything other than, no, we're going to still be in Iran for at least 2 to 3 more weeks. And you can't say shit like that and not expect oil to just punch through the ceiling. And it's going to continue to do that. So just be prepared for a wild ride in the oil markets and everything that comes along with that. Now, BlackRock has filed for a ticker for a Bitcoin Premium Income ETF as Bitcoin strategy expands. Micah Zimmerman, Bitcoin Magazine, says that BlackRock moved forward with its Bitcoin Premium Income strategy, revealing a ticker for its upcoming iShares Bitcoin Premium Income ETF. Bloomberg ETF analyst Eric Balchunas said on X that the fund will trade under BITA and noted that BlackRock has filed an amended S1 registration statement for that product, describing it as a sequel to its existing Bitcoin ETF lineup. He added that no management fee has been set yet, with his over and under estimate at 38 basis points. There is no official launch date yet. The proposed ETF is designed to combine direct Bitcoin exposure with an income-generating options overlay. According to prior SEC filings, the structure is intended to hold Bitcoin-linked assets, including shares of BlackRock's Spot Bitcoin ETF, while also writing covered call options on those holdings. The strategy aims to generate premium income while still tracking Bitcoin's price performance, net the expenses. The fund is part of BlackRock's broader effort to expand institutional BTC products beyond passive exposure and into yield-focused strategies. It reflects growing demand from allocators who want BTC exposure but also seek portfolio income similar to traditional equity option writing funds. So they are one step closer to releasing a yield-bearing Bitcoin-linked instrument. And here's this is the part that I'm actually focused on. The fund is part of BlackRock's broader effort to expand institutional Bitcoin products beyond passive exposure and into yield-focused strategies. That one sentence right there tells me the direction that they're going, and that they're not, once somebody like Morgan Stanley picks a direction, they're not going to go back. Once somebody like BlackRock picks a direction, they're not going to go back. TD Waterhouse, all these guys. Once they see something, they're going to go for it and they're not going to move back. So why the yield generating issue? Because of strategy. They're seeing what Michael Saylor has been able to do with STRC, and they want a piece of that pie. Even in the midst of Bitcoin being continuously thrown back onto the ropes because of oil, which is because of Iran. Although I will say this about Bitcoin, it's holding up really well. I'm actually really amazed that the people that are just, it's like we're just dogs with bones. We just refuse to buy into this crap and sell everything that we have. It's the most amazing thing that I've seen. I would have thought that there would have been a lot more downward pressure on Bitcoin, especially after Trump's speech last night. But amazingly, no. I mean, did it dip? Yeah, of course it dipped. But it didn't do what I thought it was, what I would have, well, it didn't do something that if it had, it wouldn't have surprised me. So the resilience here is impressive. But back to this whole BlackRock thing, moving into yield generating Bitcoin linked products, I think is simply because they're looking at what Saylor did. And they're going, this is actually a pretty good idea. And that also means that they've got some kind of intelligence on the ground that suggests people are not done buying this format of product. So we need to wrap it in something that is uniquely BlackRock, uniquely Morgan Stanley, uniquely us. They're branding it, but it's going to actually follow in the footsteps of what Michael Saylor has been doing. Okay, so Fed's Barr says that stablecoins need tighter control to fight money laundering because that's all we apparently do as human beings is launder money. Decrypt's Andre Bagansky has it. Needing nothing more than a phone and internet connection to hold stablecoins may be a blessing for some, but a nightmare for others. That accessibility presents risks that regulators still need to address, according to Federal Reserve Governor Michael Barr. When it comes to implementing rules and regulations under the Genius Act, Barr said at an event in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday that U.S. regulators will need adequate anti-money laundering controls in order for stablecoins to reach their full potential. They're going to regulate the shit out of it. Quote, a key area of concern is the potential for stablecoin use in money laundering or, of course, terrorist financing, since bad actors can purchase stablecoin on secondary markets that may not have customer identification requirements. Both regulatory and technological solutions will need to be deployed to limit these risks. Barr's remark touched on financial stability risks that stablecoins may pose. Still, his focus on the accessibility cuts at a key functionality users have enjoyed for years, considering 66% of stablecoins are held by individuals in emerging markets where access to dollars can be costly or restricted, according to Goldman Sachs. When it comes to the regulatory solutions, Barr's comments likely refer to the Bank Secrecy Act, a law requiring financial institutions to assist government agencies in detecting and preventing illicit finance. Nicholas Anthony, a policy analyst at the Cato Institute, told Decrypt, quote, on the technological front, it's a little bit tricky to speculate exactly what he means, he said. Quote, if I were to guess, I would imagine it's something about maybe deploying smart contracts to have automatic flags and freezes in concerning situations, end quote. Oh, God. Anthony underscored that uncertainty, noting that Barr's call for anti-money laundering controls could also involve streamlining existing surveillance processes. Barr's assessment follows the submission of a report to Congress from the U.S. Treasury Department this month, which found that many financial institutions are taking a proactive approach toward money laundering risks with digital assets. That includes using AI algorithms to conduct sophisticated analysis of blockchain data despite a lack of standards, the agency found. At the same time, intergovernmental agencies like the Financial Action Task Force have called on stablecoin issuers to implement technical measures to be able to block, freeze, and withdraw stablecoin at any time. The organization pointed to peer-to-peer transactions as a key vulnerability contributing to money laundering, terrorist financing, and sanctions evasion. I'm surprised they didn't put "Won't somebody think of the children" on this list. The report submitted by the department suggested Congress should consider a, quote, hold law, which would provide institutions with legal protections for freezing digital assets suspected to be involved in illicit activity during a short-term investigation. Such a law would be particularly useful for countering illicit financing involving permitted payment stablecoins, the U.S. Department of Treasury added. Barr has at times expressed other concerns with stablecoin. In 2023, he signaled that stablecoins without federal oversight have the potential to undermine credibility in the U.S. central bank, which is recognized as, quote, the ultimate source of credibility and money. Sorry. Barr said at the time that the Fed was a long way from determining whether the U.S. central bank would issue a central bank digital currency. And this month, the Senate passed a housing bill, including a provision outlawing any kind of CBDC in the United States until at least 2031. That's not long enough. It should have been 2,331, but whatever. Conservatives have long argued that a CBDC would empower the federal government to exert more control over everyday transactions, yet some states are crafting laws that expand their own power when it comes to policing stablecoin transactions. A stablecoin bill that recently passed in Florida, for example, looped dollar-pegged tokens into the state's existing rules to combat illicit finance. The provision includes transaction monitoring requirements and a $10,000 reporting threshold for transactions. Okay, that's the end of that article. freeze, hold, and withdraw rights mediated through smart contracts forced upon stablecoin issuers to implement is sort of where we're going with this. And what I don't think any of these people have really learned yet is that, fine, do it. And yet somebody else somewhere in the world will come up with a stable coin that, quote, doesn't do that, end quote. The whole reason Bitcoin exists was to completely circumvent a lot of this crap. And for the great guts and feathers of it, has. And then we get stable coins. That's because of Tether and Bitfinex. And now they want to be able to figure out a way to control that. Put regulations on that. And it's just not going to work, because I think humanity has now been pushed to a new limit of fuck you. I really do. I really think that a good, great guts and feathers of all of humanity have been pushed right to the brink. I mean, we're just under the threshold of worldwide violent revolution, but we are over the threshold of just saying, fine, do that, we'll build something else. And then you can waste your time worrying about that one. And while you're doing that, we'll build something else. And while you figure that one out, we'll build something else. And then we'll build and build and build and build. Because the only thing that is saving us at this point is free and open source software. That is the true escape hatch that Fifi Lagarde over there in Europe was bitching about. Wasn't really Bitcoin. In her mind, it probably was. But in my mind, I'm listening to her talk, and what I realize is that the escape hatch, what she said was, if we give people an escape hatch, and she was kind of talking about digital assets that were not all that regulated. If we give people an escape hatch, they will use it. And she doesn't want an escape hatch to be used, because if you let all your livestock out of the pen and they run away, you can't milk those cows. And that's what she wants. And that's not what she sees, that's not what she's going to be able to get. And in some way, form, fashion, or such, she's going to have to be able to close the pen doors to the barn so that all the cattle are kept inside so they can continue milking us for the rest of our lives. What she was really talking about was free and open source software, because that's where Bitcoin came from. That's where Nostr is coming from. That's where Lightning Protocol is coming from. That's where all of this stuff, Linux, is out of free and open source software. It runs like 98% of the world. Of course, you don't see it on your computer because you're using either Macintosh or Windows or something, but streetlights and servers and what's powering your bank on the back end, that's all Linux, man, and it's all free and open source software. That's the escape hatch. It's not just Bitcoin. It's not just Nostr. It's not just Lightning. It's not just Linux. Name your poison. It's all of it. That's the escape hatch. And that's what we need to continuously be able to support. That's what we need to be using. That's what we need to be throwing our weight behind. Not just Bitcoin, not just pick your poison, but free and open source software. Now, here's what I got for the Circle P today. The Circle P is open for business. It's where I bring plebs just like you with goods and services to plebs just like you who want to buy goods and services from other plebs. But you will be buying it in Bitcoin, because if you're not selling in Bitcoin, you're not in the Circle P. And from takemysats.com, we've got BitPaste, a premium homemade Madagascar vanilla paste. This is actually from Kid Warp's Vanilla Shop, right? This is actually Kid Warp's Vanilla Shop. He now has a storefront, and it's takemysats.com/Kid Warp's Vanilla Shop. I've got the link. The URL is in the show notes. And all you got to do is go to the show notes, click that link, and you will get to BitPaste. and Kid Warp's storefront. I've got to come clean, got to be, clear here. I have not physically tasted the bit paste, right? But I've known Kid Warp for a very, very, very long time. He's been a listener to the show for a very, very, very long time. I asked him if he would be part of the Circle P. He never approached me. I said, how do we get your bit paste in, and why? Because of the ingredients that he's using. Check this out. Organic Madagascar vanilla beans, the actual beans themselves, vodka, sugar water, organic agave nectar, and a little bit of xanthan gum, probably to, make it tighten it up a little bit. What would you use it for? It's not something you're going to spread on bread. All right. It's something that, like, for instance, what I would use it for, I'd make vanilla ice cream with it. That is the first thing that I would do if I had a jar of this stuff chilling out. As the weather warms up, because we're definitely getting into spring, as the weather warms up and I want to make some ice cream, I am going to be looking at bit paste. You'd also, it's think of it this way. Everywhere that you would use vanilla extract for, you can think about possibly, depending on the, what it is that you're baking, substituting vanilla paste for. I used to use vanilla paste a lot to be able to flavor things with vanilla when I didn't want to use vanilla extract. And it works just as well. There's some things that you're not going to use it for. Like if you're using vanilla extract to make a cocktail with, you may consider actually using bit paste, but there would be a little bit of, residue down in the bottom of the drink. You may not want that. That's where you kind of consider, okay, do I use vanilla paste or do I use vanilla extract? It doesn't matter, dude. This bit paste stuff, I've seen his videos of how he makes this. This is a person who really cares about the product that he makes. So go to the URL in the show notes. All right. It's takemysats.com/kidwarps-vanilla-shop if you just can't get to the show notes or whatever. And make sure that you tell him that with the code Bitcoin and that you heard about it here on the Circle P, because you'll get 10% off. By the way, he's not really shipping outside of the United States. If you pay him a lot of money, maybe he'll consider it, but no, it's United States residents only because international shipping sucks. Use Bitcoin and for 10% off. Use Bitcoin and for 10% off and get Kid Warp's vanilla paste. Now, Interactive Brokers adds Bitcoin trading in European Economic Area. And this is Micah Zimmerman, Bitcoin Magazine. Interactive Brokers has launched crypto trading for eligible retail investors across the European Economic Area, extending its digital asset offering through Interactive Brokers Ireland Limited, an authorized crypto asset service provider. The rollout gives users access to 11 digital assets, including Bitcoin, alongside equities, options, futures, currencies, bonds, and mutual funds within a single account interface. The offering is enabled through an integration with Zero Hash, which provides back-end crypto and stablecoin infrastructure for institutional platforms. The partnership expands an existing relationship between the two firms and opens access to a market of roughly 450 million people across the European Economic Area. So this is targeting retail. It's not institutional. I mean, institutions could use it if they wanted to, but they don't need to. But retail does need an on-ramp, off-ramp, such as Interactive Brokers. So the European Union now has yet one more tool for these people to buy Bitcoin. Sadly, they've also given them options and futures and derivatives and all kinds of other gambling infrastructure. So just if you're in the European Union and you need a way to buy Bitcoin and you don't want to gamble, just buy the Bitcoin from Interactive Brokers and leave the rest behind. Let's run the numbers. CNBC futures and commodities, Merbon crude is up 9.75 of a point to $113.70 a barrel. Brent North Sea itself is up 6.75 point to 107.95. West Texas Intermediate is up 11 points, actually 11.33 points, to hit $111.39. Now, this is like a little bit of an aside. When I use I use TradingView to look at all kinds of prices on a daily basis, right? That TradingView is, I actually really like this website. It's really functional it's very functional for even if you don't have an account. There's a lot of stuff that you can't do, but if you're, if you just use it like me, it's a really good website. TradingView, was it tradingview.com? I'm pretty sure it's TradingView. Yeah, tradingview.com. It's got a lot of really functional chart capabilities for those that don't pay a monthly, subscription fee. If you want a whole bunch of other tools, you'll have to pay that. But for me, I don't need it. The reason I'm bringing it up is that the price that I've selected for West Texas Intermediate, the price oracle that I've selected on TradingView, is flashing $102.66. Whereas CNBC's oracle is flashing $111.36 a barrel at the same time. That is one hell of a gap. So I would imagine that there's all manner of arbitrage going on at this point. Natural gas remains in the red. It's down 1/4 point, back down to $2.81 per thousand cubic feet. Gasoline spiking 4.1% to $3.21 a gallon. Metals are all in the red except for palladium, 0.19% to the upside. Gold is down 2 2/3 of a point to $4,668. Platinum is down a point. Silver is down 5.5 to $71.88. Copper is down a point. Most agriculture futures are in the red today. Cotton is the only thing in the green, 0.33% to the upside, makes it our biggest winner. Biggest loser is chocolate, 3 points to the downside. Live cattle up 0.17, lean hogs down 1/4, and feeder cattle basically sideways. S&P is down 1/4, NASDAQ is down 1/3, the Dow is down almost a 0.5 point, and the S&P Mini is down 1/4 of a point. Bitcoin is down too to $66,810. That is a $1.34 trillion market cap, and we can only purchase 14.3 ounces of our favorite shiny metal rock with our one Bitcoin, of which there are 20,010,332.41 of, and average fees per block are 0.02 BTC taken in fees on a per block basis. It's about 21 blocks carrying 21,000 unconfirmed transactions waiting to clear at high priorities of 2 sats per VByte. Low priorities get you in at 0.3. Finally broke down below 1 zettahash per second. Bitcoin hash rate sits now at 994 exahashes per second. So, oh my God, mining death spiral. Blah, blah, blah. From Texas Hold'em, yesterday's episode of Bitcoin and I got Oak Grove giving me 1,290 sats, says, all I have today is that Meta shut down the metaverse but bought up Moltbook, the social network for AI models. My stomach hurts at the thought of them being experimented on like we were. Nick Dose with 183 says, cheers. Cheers right back at you, pal. And Noster Gang says, nothing with 101 Satoshis. That's the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news that you can use. Human Rights Foundation announced the Bitcoin Development Fund supporting 26 projects worldwide. Well, their Bitcoin Development Fund has been around. I kind of blew that headline. I'm discombobulated today. Yeah, they're funding 26 projects, and here's their support list. By the way, this is Micah Zimmerman for Bitcoin Mag. The HRF has announced 1.5 billion Satoshis in new grants through its Bitcoin Development Fund, expanding support for projects focused on both Bitcoin infrastructure, privacy, and education. The funding round targets open source developers. Remember, we were talking about FOSS, free and open source software, researchers, and educational initiatives working across Bitcoin's ecosystem with an emphasis on tools that strengthen financial privacy and censorship resistance. According to HRF, the grants are intended to advance Bitcoin-based technologies that can support dissidents and human rights defenders operating under authoritarian regimes. The organization estimates its efforts ultimately serve billions of people living under restrictive political systems where access to open financial networks and uncensorable payment rails can be limited or surveilled. HRF's grantees for the first quarter of 2026 include, and this is for the heading Bitcoin privacy. So under Bitcoin privacy, HRF is now supporting Bitcoin Core P2P privacy enhancements, Join Market NG, and under Bitcoin payments heading, we have Banxas, Banxaas, we have Cheap Smart, we have Minmo, we have Tando, and Tapknob. For Bitcoin development, they are supporting Rawbit, Doblon 8. Under Bitcoin community heading, they are supporting Bitcoin Benin, Bitcoin for Good, Bitcoin House Malaysia, Summer of Bitcoin, Yes Bitcoin Haiti. Under Freedom Tech, they are supporting the Activist Atlas, Crux, Learn Noster, NetBlocks Internet Observatory. Under Bitcoin Research and Education, they are supporting Amity Age, Base 58, Bitcoin Policy Norway, BTC Schul, Daniel Batten, DIY Bitcoin, Economic Inclusion Group, and Seed Signer User Group. That is a lot of people that the HRF is supporting. And the HRF is really one of the only nonprofits that I actually respect. Like, they say that Red Cross is a nonprofit. Yeah, have you seen their CEO's jet? Yeah, HRF doesn't act that way. So if you need a charity to think about donating to, think about the Human Rights Foundation. They do really good work, and they've been supporting Bitcoin for years. Years. On to Blockstream and Jonas Nick. Jonas presents Shrimps, a post-quantum signature scheme for Bitcoin. See, I was saying yesterday, the developers in Bitcoin have been working on quantum for years. Quantum resistance. They've been thinking about it. They've been hacking tools together for it. The FUD of the quantum FUD that we've been hearing for the last few months at this point, really keeps suggesting one thing. Like, if you listen to Nick Carter and you believe everything he says, what you would think is that no Bitcoin developer anywhere is doing anything about quantum and has never done so, which is not true. And Atlas 21 is going to give you an example of how Jonas Nick has been working on this. Bitcoin researcher Jonas Nick at Blockstream has presented Shrimps, a post-quantum signature scheme designed to support secure signing across multiple devices while maintaining relatively compact signature sizes. The proposal was published March 30th, 2026, and fits into the ongoing debate on quantum resistance in cryptographic systems, and that includes Bitcoin. From a technical standpoint, Shrimps is a hash-based construction that allows multiple devices initialized from the same seed to generate signatures independently. The resulting signatures are typically around 2.5 kilobytes in size at a 128-bit security level. The proposal builds on previous work such as Shrinks, which produces smaller signatures but is limited to a single device configuration due to state management constraints. Shrimps is designed to remove that limitation. enabling independent signing across multiple devices while keeping security within a predefined bound. The approach assumes an upper limit on the number of devices derived from a single seed, which helps preserve the integrity of the scheme. Technically, the construction combines two Sphinx plus instances under a single public key. A compact signing path is used for initial signatures, while a fallback path supports additional uses, allowing the system to balance efficiency as well as flexibility. Comparing shrimps with stateless alternatives such as SLH DSA, where signatures can reach approximately 7.8 kilobytes, the advantage in terms of compactness is clear. The proposal also outlines a hybrid model with shrinks, in which a primary device can generate smaller signatures while backup devices uses shrimps to maintain multi-device functionality. The design could find application in systems such as Bitcoin wallets, where keys are typically used for a limited number of signatures and multi-device configurations are common. The research comes at a time of renewed discussion around quantum computing and its potential long-term impact on cryptographic systems, including Bitcoin. While practical quantum attacks are still considered years or decades away, research into post-quantum signatures continues to explore ways to mitigate theoretical risks. Separately, as reported by Atlas 21 in a recent article on the topic of quantum computing and Bitcoin, a widely circulated post highlights that a co-author cited as a Bitcoin security researcher is indeed affiliated with the Ethereum Foundation, raising questions about the neutrality of conclusions regarding alleged vulnerabilities in Bitcoin's cryptography. Okay. Shrimps, I heard about it first a couple of days ago. I didn't really, want to talk about it then. We had other shrimp to fry. But this is, you don't really have to know the technicalities here. Just understand that unlike what Nick Carter keeps saying, that nobody's doing anything about quantum security on Bitcoin and therefore it's going to die, that's untrue. There are several researchers and several developers in the Bitcoin ecosystem that have been, still are, and will continue to be working on the quantum threat. Pay very close attention to the people that you listen to. Do they have skin in some game that would benefit from the destruction of Bitcoin? Nick does. He does. As far as the signature size, to get a little technical here, as far as the signature sizes are concerned, Shrimps is using this 2.5 kilobyte signature scheme, whereas one of the other ones, this SLH DSA, uses 7.8. Why is that important? Your signature goes along for the ride on a transaction. The larger the signature, the larger the amount of data that you have to shove inside that transaction. The more amount of data inside a transaction, the more you're going to pay for that transaction in fees. That's what that boils down to. What we really are more concerned about as of right now is not as much about fees, although that would become a problem later on in the future. But right now, we just want something that's quantum resistant, or quantum proof would actually be better, but who knows if that's even possible. Again, we're in a situation where nobody really knows what the hell's going on. At this point, even the quantum researchers really don't know what's going on. I will bet you my ass that they sit around with each other over beers every once in a while going, shit, I'm surprised any of this works at all. You're dealing with quantum. You're dealing with forces that exist at the sub-atomic level. You've cracked protons and neutrons to get into almost the language of God at this point. This is a realm of the universe that even Einstein was kind of going, this is bullshit, until he figured out that it wasn't. He basically said of not quantum computing, but of quantum back in the day. God does not roll dice with the universe. Then he kind of figured it out and goes, well, okay, but that was like towards the end of his life. But most people remember this: God does not roll dice with the universe. Like, these, it's like chances, right? The chance of this stuff. And while that's part of what's going on in quantum, it is a very small part of what's going on in quantum. Still, though, we are at levels of theory and at the very edge of what instruments can actually detect. And I am amazed that this works at all. So I'm just not all that worried about it right now. I would be worried about it if what Nick Carter said was true and that nobody was working on this problem for Bitcoin. Yes, that would concern me. But they've been talking, I've heard developers in Bitcoin talking about the upcoming quantum thing at least 3 years ago. So I don't know what these people are trying to do with all this quantum FUD. I can conjecture until the world looks level, but I don't actually know because I don't live inside their head and I've never had beers with them, so I don't know. But the fact that one of the issues that are central to the quantum FUD is that nobody in Bitcoin is working on the problem is patently false. Please don't fall for it. For the love of God, don't fall for it. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the Genius Act. The U.S. Treasury has launched the first rulemaking with an 87-page proposal. Micah Zimmerman, Bitcoin Magazine. The U.S. Department of Treasury has formally begun implementing the Guiding and Establishing National Innovation for U.S. Stablecoins Act. That's the Genius Act. Releasing its first notice of proposed rulemaking and opening a 60-day public comment period. The 87-page proposal outlines how the Treasury will determine whether state-level stablecoin regulatory regimes are substantially similar to the federal framework, a key threshold, allowing smaller issuers to remain under state supervision. Under the Genius Act, stablecoin issuers with less than $10 billion in outstanding supply can opt for state-level regulation, provided that those regimes meet or exceed federal standards. The proposed rule establishes broad principles to guide that determination while leaving states flexibility in areas like licensing, supervision, and enforcement. According to the document, the Treasury draws a clear distinction between uniform requirements, such as reserve backing and anti-money-laundering compliance, and state-calibrated requirements, where local regulators retain discretion, including capital and risk management standards. Notably, the proposal anchors the federal benchmark largely to rules and interpretations issued by the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, signaling its central role in overseeing non-bank stablecoin issuers that transition to federal supervision after crossing the $10 billion threshold. The rule also clarifies that state frameworks may exceed federal requirements so long as they do not conflict with federal law or undermine overall comparability. The NPRM marks Treasury's first formal step in translating the Genius Act, which was enacted in July 2025, into an actual operational regulatory regime for payment stablecoins, with final rules expected after the public comment period closes. State regimes would also be barred from weakening core disclosure standards, with issuers required to publish reserve composition reports at least monthly, matching federal frequency requirements. Naming restrictions would similarly apply across both frameworks, preventing state-regulated issuers from using prohibited terms in stablecoin branding. The proposal underscores that federal law remains the baseline, noting that any future legislation passed by Congress governing stablecoin issuers would automatically apply to state-regulated firms unless explicitly stated otherwise. The 2025 passage of the Genius Act marked a turning point in U.S. crypto policy, establishing the first federal framework for stablecoins and requiring full reserve backing, AML compliance, and regular disclosures. So why is this important? Because the Genius Act isn't actually in place. That's signed into law, but we needed to figure out from the United States Department of Treasury how it's going to work. This is the first time that they've issued these sets of rules for public comment. So even though the Genius Act is passed by the House, passed by the Senate, sent to the president's desk, and the president signed it into law, it's not actually functional at this point. It's not doing anything. It's just kind of sitting there waiting for the Treasury Department to get off its ass and tell us how this thing's going to actually work. And now they've done that. They've made their first rulemaking on this issue, and the public has 60 days to comment. And then I guess they'll do maybe some revisions. So I wouldn't expect the Genius Act to actually take effect across stablecoin and the infrastructure of stablecoin for at least 180 days. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they get something in place, because that would kind of help some people figure out what they're going to do when it comes on it. Amazingly, when it even comes to Bitcoin, even though the Genius Act is about stablecoins, people want some kind of regulatory clarity. And even though we got the Genius Act, people are still not really clear about the regulations. So that's where we are right now, and thank God for it. Ending the day today, this is not an April Fool's joke. Major Solana-based trading platform Drift has been exploited for $200 million, according to Daniel Kuhn, writing for The Block. Solana-based Drift protocol has suffered an exploit, leading to at least $200 million in losses, according to on-chain data. Some estimates place losses closer to $270 million. Quote, "We are observing unusual activity on the protocol. We are currently investigating," Drift wrote on X. Quote, "Please do not deposit funds into the protocol while we investigate. This is not an April Fool's joke. Proceed with caution until further notice." End quote. According to Rex leaderboard, the attack would rank as one of the largest on-chain crypto hacks to date, and potentially the largest Solana-based exploit outside of the $326 million wormhole bridge exploit. The exploit, which started over 2 hours ago, and actually much longer than that because this article came out a while ago, seems to be targeting multiple Drift vaults, including JLP Delta Neutral, SOL Super Staking, and BTC Super Staking. One large transfer of 41.7 million JLP tokens was worth about $155 million alone, though other assets including SOL, USDC, CB, BTC, and wrapped Bitcoin were also drained, according to SolScan. Drift is down nearly 5% to 6.4 pennies, according to the block's data. Looks on Chain found evidence that the exploiter has begun swapping the stolen assets into USDC using Jupiter, the Solana-based DEX aggregator, and is bridging those stablecoins onto Ethereum to buy ETH. As of 1745 UTC, the attacker held 19,913 ETH, worth about $42 million. Drift Protocol is a decentralized open source trading platform. Okay, so it's not really DeFi, but open source trading platform built on top of Solana. It is often considered to be a core part of the Solana ecosystem, particularly for perpetuals trading, with total value locked above $550 million, according to DeFi Llama. The main exploiter address appears to have been created a mere 8 days ago, when it began swapping on OKX and Jupiter DEXs. It then remained inactive until 18 hours ago, according to SolScan. Drift said it will provide additional updates from its official X account as it learns more. So they got hosed for up to $270 million. That's one of the largest exploits ever. Stay off of this stuff, man. Seriously. Just buy Bitcoin and hold Bitcoin. I just don't see, I don't see the utility of any of the rest of this garbage except for gambling. That's the only thing that I see this as useful for, is gambling. Somehow trying to arbitrage your way to a better life, and that just doesn't really work all that well because of shit like this. So be very, very, very careful out there, folks, and I will see you on the other side.
This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.